We were looking at one of the components of the ISLMPC model, the Phillips curve. So we started off with how do we rewrite its equation in terms of the output gap rather than unemployment. Then we looked at properties of the Phillips curve, where we looked at how it's going to be upward sloping because you have y on the x-axis and not u. And then we looked at how its horizontal intercept is always the natural level of output. So now I want to look at what will shift the Phillips curve. So now for this, let's go back to the Phillips curve equation. That is pi minus pi bar is equal to alpha by L y minus yn. Now we know when we're plotting the Phillips curve in this ISLMPC model, we take pi minus pi bar on the y-axis and we take y on the x-axis. In this case, we can see from the equation what is going to now shift the Phillips curve are going to be changes in the natural level of output. Now let's look at how the Phillips curve will shift if there's an increase or if there's a decrease in the natural level of output. An increase in the natural level of output will shift the Phillips curve towards the right. An easy way to think about this is that the x-intercept of the Phillips curve is always the natural level of output. So when the natural level of output increases, so when we're going to plot the Phillips curve, it will have a larger x-intercept, so it shifts towards the right. Decrease in y will shift the Phillips curve towards the left. Because again, keep in mind, it will always have an x-intercept, which is the natural level of output. So now when there's a decrease in the natural level of output, when we plot it, it will have a smaller x-intercept, so it shifts towards the left. Now the question arises, what changes the natural level of output? For this, we go back to the WSPS model, because in that, towards the end, we looked at how do we go from UN to YN, and we looked at how YN depends upon UN. Because when UN changes, natural level of employment changes, and that changes the natural level of output. So whatever changes UN will actually change YN, and we know from the WSPS model what changes UN are shifts in WS curve and shifts in PS curve. Now shifts in WS curve, so the first thing that can change YN are going to be shifts in the weight setting curve, which can occur due to changes in Z, where we remember that Z stands for all factors that affect wages given the expected price level and unemployment rate. Such as the minimum wage, employment protection, unemployment insurance, and level of unionization. So what would shift the weight setting curve would be either an increase in Z or a decrease in Z. If we have an increase in Z, that will shift the weight setting curve upwards because now the workers will demand a higher wage for any, because now workers will have higher bargaining power for any given unemployment period, they'll demand higher wages, so the weight setting curve shifts upwards. And when that happens, if we recall from the WSPS model, where we looked at these two diagrams also, this increases the natural rate of unemployment. So the natural level of employment goes down, so natural level of output goes down. When we plot the Phillips curve, it has a smaller x-intercept, so it shifts left. And the exact opposite stuff happens if there's a decrease in C. Now, obviously, another thing that can shift YN is going to be shifts in the price setting curve, which we know occur due to changes in markup, where the markup may change because of either changes in competition or changes in non-wage cost of firms, such as price of oil, because then they will respond by changing the markup accordingly. And this is something, again, I was looking in detail in the WSPS model. Right, so if we have an increase in markup, we know the price setting curve shifts down in the WSPS model because we know the equation of the price setting curve is W by P is 1 by 1 plus M. So in this case, if we can see the markup increases on the right-hand side, then the real wage firms are willing to pay goes down, the PS curve shifts down. And that causes, again, natural rate of unemployment to go up, which causes natural level of employment to go down and natural level of output to go down. So when we plot the Phillips curve, it will have a smaller x-intercept and it will shift towards the left. Exact opposite happens if there's a decrease in markup. So when we're thinking about shifts in the Phillips curve, we need to think about how it has in its background the WSPS model. It will shift when YN changes, which will change because of changes in the weight setting curve or the price, which will change because of shifts in the weight setting curve or price setting curve in the WSPS model.